California is broke again, and if legislative analyst office budgetary predictions hold, it will be the fourth consecutive year that California has a budget deficit. We're going to get into that story and more and discuss what is going on. Why is California broke again? I'm sure you have some guesses, which you can leave in the comments below. But first, if you are not part of the 15% of Californians who want to learn more about California politics and hear commentary like ours about what is going on, keep you in the loop, please make sure you hit the subscribe, like, notification, and bell, and all of that stuff. Let's get into that first story right now.
The legislature has to pass a budget that is in balance.
A balanced budget means California's revenue has to match what it spends. And right now, the Legislative Analyst's Office says the state can only get there by cutting spending, increasing revenue, or a combination of both.
Well, I am in favor of the first one, not the second one, because it seems that always seems to be their solution on any level of government, city, county, statewide. Whenever they run into budget deficits, what's the first thing they do is they always run to tax you more, especially places like here in San Diego where they're charging you for quite literally everything, including parking at Balboa, parking at the beach, parking in parks. It's unbelievable. Whenever they fail at budgets, it's always you who ends up paying for it.
And we have deficits. That's a spending issue that is Sacramento's fault.
Some Democrats agree, though they also cite President Trump and Washington's economic policies for
Always Trump's fault. It's Trump's fault. That's why. It's Trump's fault. Yeah, it's Trump's fault that California is in a budget deficit and looks like it's going to be in a fourth consecutive budget deficit. Always Trump's fault. And I assume that when they said California is the fourth largest economy, they love to crow about how California is the fourth largest economy in the world. They always love to talk about how California is the fourth largest economy in the world. Yet they can't seem to get their budget right. And they always talk about how they can just do it on their own. They can secede from the United States. But for some reason, I guess Donald Trump and federal cuts have something to do with why California is broke.
higher costs.
Government spending, that's always been a problem, and it often takes a budget deficit for Sacramento to.
California Republicans say during budget discussions, they don't have a seat at the table.
And without any say from the minority Republican Party, that means they should get 100% of the blame for the deficit.
Republican Assemblymember David Tongipaw, who is on the Budget Committee, says it's about transparency and resource allocation, like on homelessness.
What programs work and what doesn't. But right now we have no idea where that money went and what positive benefit we got from it.
Republican State Senator Roger Nilo, vice chair of the Senate Budget Committee, agrees, saying without that insight, it's hard to pinpoint where to cut spending.
We haven't done the work that needs to be done to discover what needs to be done.
On food stamps so that poor people get food assistance.
With new eligibility requirements for federal assistance programs like Medi-Cal, healthcare, and CalFresh, food stamps, California will have to make up for billions of dollars.
Food assistance.
They're going to have to make up for the overpromising, basically, is what they're saying. So California overpromised with who could get Medi-Cal and who can get food stamps. Because of the fact that the federal government was funding and subsidizing a lot of this, California overpromised how much people could get Medi-Cal, who could be eligible for Medi-Cal. Don't forget that they expanded Medi-Cal to so many people that millions of people came on to Medi-Cal, and it broke the system within less than a year. So they overpromised because of the federal government.
Healthcare and funding for our schools, those things are not wasteful. We have to protect them.
Democrats are standing.
There's waste and abuse everywhere in the government. So it's not that they're not wasteful. I mean, it's not hands off. I think you should look at everything when you're $20 billion in a budget deficit. Sure, I think you need to look at everything and make sure the money is going where it's supposed to be going. And if we know anything about California, it's that there's always waste and that there's little accountability of where any of this money is going.
In those priorities, Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas writing in a statement, quote, "We must invest limited dollars on sustainable, vital essentials, healthcare, food aid, housing, education. But Republicans argue other priorities are excluded."
Public safety, the funding of Proposition 36, which was supported by almost 70% of the voters.
The governor will be making his final decision.
And don't forget that they asked for Prop 36. They said the estimate was about $400 million to enact Prop 36. And there was another video that we did about how somebody was released back onto the streets, ended up killing to more people. We did a video on that a couple weeks ago. They wanted to fund Prop 36. Gavin Newsom said no. They said it was too much money. They threw $100 million at it, but they found $300 million for the special election for Prop 50. Tell me, is it priorities, or is it you're just picking and choosing which programs you want to throw money at?
Goes into that budget after the Thanksgiving holiday.
The legislature will discuss that budget when they reconvene for session in January and finalize it by June. Jenny Ha, CBS 8.
All right. Well, let's get into what the LAO said specifically. It said in executive summary, basically there's three reasons why they believe that there's going to be a budget deficit is because revenues they don't expect to keep up, even though there's been a lot of this AI boom, and a lot of people are iffy about the AI boom. It kind of feels like the .com boom, like everybody's getting into the AI boom. I mean, you see AI everywhere now. It's like in every single app has some sort of AI. So they're seeing some revenue, but they're being cautious about the fact that they're not stoked about how long AI can keep going. It doesn't build into the fact that if there's a stock market downturn, what happens then? Because a lot of California's income comes from income tax, and a lot of that is capital gains and how much people make in the stock market. Basically, how much do the wealthy make in the stock market? How much do they make on those assets? So if there is a stock market downturn, and a lot of people can write that off as losses, then you're not going to see the revenues here in California. So they depend on the stock market doing well. They depend on these revenues from big companies, big tech companies. And it says, under our revenue and spending estimates, the legislature faces an almost $18 billion budget problem in 26 and 27. This is about $5 billion larger than the budget problem anticipated by the administration in June, despite improvements in revenue. Budget position is weak. We advise the legislature to address the budget problem through a combination of ongoing solutions, namely achievable spending reductions and or revenue increases. There are three reasons these actions are now critical. First, the budget problem is now larger than anticipated despite improvements in revenue, and the structural deficits are significant and growing. Second, while our revenue estimates hedge against a market downturn, they do not reflect the revenue declines the state would experience in a recession. Third, the state has used most of its budget resilience tools to address prior deficits. If our estimates hold, the legislature will face a fourth consecutive year of budget problems, all during a period of overall revenue growth. I want to just point that out, that California is experiencing a budget deficit despite the fact that revenues are going up. I think I need to say that again. California has a projected $18 billion budget deficit for 26 and 27, even though revenues are going up. So to me, that doesn't sound like a revenue problem, even though the LAO wants to say, well, maybe we have to figure out some new revenue increases. That 100% sounds like a spending problem. If you're getting more money and you are constantly in debt and you are constantly in the red, that's a spending problem. If you individually continue to make more money year after year, let's just say you're in a job and all of a sudden you keep making more money, you keep getting a big raise every year, and you keep making more money. But every year you keep racking up credit card debt and you go, why do I have so much debt? I don't understand. I make more money every year. Sounds like a spending problem. You may have to look at what you're spending money on and step back and go, I think I need to fix my spending habits, not how much money I make. So I wanted to point that out. That is a crazy statement that the LAO is saying. We're getting more revenue in California, yet we're about to have a fourth consecutive year of budget deficits. As it stands, with larger forecasted deficits and many fewer tools available to address them, California's budget is undeniably less prepared for downturns. Let's keep going and take a look. Why do budget problems grow? We talked about this before. The legislature has needed to address budget problems for 3 years in a row. The state solved a $27 billion deficit in 23 and 24, a $55 billion deficit in 24 to 25, and a $15 billion budget deficit for 25 and 26. And it goes on, under our revenue and spending estimates, the legislature faces an almost $18 billion budget problem in 26 and 27. This is about a $5 billion larger than the budget problem anticipated by the administration in June. So it's $5 billion more than what Gavin Newsom in the administration had predicted. So they still overspent, even with all their fancy schmancy kind of tricks of borrowing from themselves. So here's some of the things that they said were the causes of why. Right here, all their costs increased, budget problem by almost $6 billion. Statewide expenditures higher than $2.4 billion. Statewide expenditures include items like retiree health care, pension payments, and statewide administrative costs, as well as set-asides for major state costs or savings that are not easily reflected. So we have retiree health care, pensions, because when you have an ever-growing government and you hire at an alarmingly fast rate and you continue to make more government employees, guess what happens? Those government employees want pensions. And when you continue to add more people to the government payroll, those people are going to want pensions. You're going to have to pay for those pensions. And no one wants to talk about the fact that California is one of the largest, forget elephant in the room, it's like the brontosaurus in the room, that there is about a $1 trillion unfunded liabilities for pension here in California, that they don't know how they're going to pay it. They've promised so much pensions for all of these employees who were employed by the state of California that there's $1 trillion in unfunded liabilities. They have no idea how they're going to pay it. It's just a ticking time bomb for California. I have no idea what's going to happen when California has to start paying those all out, and they're just absolutely broke. HR 1 increases costs by $1.3 billion across Medi-Cal and CalFresh. HR 1 made a number of changes to Medicaid, so that is the House bill that was passed this year, made a number of changes to Medicaid, known as Medi-Cal in California, and the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, known as CalFresh. Generally, these changes will result in fewer program beneficiaries and increased state costs. So then the LAO goes on to talk about the structural deficits now moving in the wrong direction. And there's this graph that shows the fiscal outlook based on the actual budget year. And I want to point this out right here. The state has not adjusted the current level of ongoing state services to fully reflect this more limited capacity. To some degree, this is because certain solutions, particularly related to state operational efficiencies, were overly optimistic in their assumed level of savings. What does that mean? That means that the state overpromised what they could provide and how much they could pay for. And because of that, there's these budget deficits. And instead of cutting those back on, we probably overpromised on a lot of this stuff, so maybe we need to scale it back and cut back on all this stuff, because they don't want to cut back on a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's a way to buy votes, is when you give people stuff for free. And they were overly optimistic on how they could make these programs more efficient, and that didn't pan out. So instead of cutting back, they were like, oh, well, let's just make it more efficient. Maybe we'll root out some waste and fraud and make it more efficient. Maybe we'll save some money there. They didn't. They didn't, because that's not California, and that's not California Democrats. And as David Tambiga said, the assemblyman, he said that Republicans have no seat at the table. So this is a 100% fault of the California Democrats over these past couple years. Now, one of the things that LAO said is that they could cut, which is one, and two, that they can increase revenue. Now, this hasn't been put forward by the legislature, but we discussed this in a separate video. There is a proposal that is trying to get onto the ballot next year where they want to tax a 5% wealth tax on 200 billionaires. It is a one-time, and I say that in quotes, one time, because once they get away with it one time, who knows how many times they're going to do it again. A one-time tax to fund a lot of health care, to fund some education. They're trying to get this onto the ballot next year. This is SEIU, which is a big union organization. They're trying to get this on the ballot for people to vote on next year, whether there should be a billionaire's tax, a one-time billionaire's tax, which would tax literally everything that a billionaire has, liquid or not. So property, capital, like stocks, assets, bonds, stuff that's in trust, all of that stuff would be included in your net worth. And whether it's liquid or not, they're going to tax you and try and get 5% from all those billionaires. Now, keep in mind that billionaires can just get up and walk away and leave the state. That's something I guess they haven't figured out. But that's one of the proposals SEIU is putting forward to try and close this gap and keep all these services. Again, we're overspending because California has promised way too much free stuff to literally too many people. Now, this is an ongoing trend here in California. They keep spending more and more and more. And I've always said that California's economy, the fourth largest economy, as they always like to say, actually it's 11th when you factor in spending power because it costs so much to live here. So it's not really the fourth largest, more like the 11th. They keep saying that this is because of all these policies that California thrives and California does so well. I want to take a look at a state that is probably the polar opposite of California and see exactly how well they're doing. And I looked this up. Texas in 2025 had a $23.76 billion surplus that could be returned to Texas taxpayers. Imagine that. Texas has been doing so well with limited government conservative policies that they have a surplus because they've kept their government limited and efficient. And they've been able to raise more money. And in fact, they're looking at giving it back to the taxpayers. Imagine something like that. California couldn't even fathom something like that. Giving money back to the taxpayers is pretty crazy. And what they've been doing with it is they've, been giving a ton of property tax relief to people in Texas. Now, keep in mind that Texas is a little bit different with property tax as California because of Prop 13. Property taxes are kind of locked in certain instances here in California. And Texas, it's a little bit different. They don't have something like a Prop 13, but they're now trying to give relief back to the taxpayers in form of property tax relief, basically trying to make it less expensive. So they're giving taxes back that way. They are also funneling billions and billions and billions of dollars back to schools. So all of this extra money that they have, they are sending billions of dollars back to school districts to make them better, to better equip them, to hire better teachers so their education continues to grow and get better. All of this because they have a surplus and because of their policies that are the complete opposite of California, where they're like, we're not going to promise the world to everybody. We're conservative. We're a limited government. So it is a stark contrast of how two states can be run. You have California promises the world to everybody. Everybody gets free stuff. Everybody gets free healthcare. Everybody gets any sort of government program that they wish. We overpromise and we can't spend it. We don't have the money to afford it. Texas, on the other hand, a much different approach, and now they have $23.76 billion surplus as of this year, and they're actually trying to figure out, well, how can we get this back to the taxpayers and give them more tax relief, and how can we use this to benefit education and all of that? Keep in mind that California ranks towards the bottom of states when it comes to education. So for all the money that California spends on education, we're in the lower, like 45 and below of education. It always comes out California is lagging behind most of the states when it comes to education. A tale of two completely different states. California is approaching its fourth consecutive year of a budget deficit. They're going to have to propose a new budget next year. It will be Gavin Newsom's final budget that he's going to propose before he is leaving and before he is termed out. Doesn't look like they have really seriously tackled the issue of overspending, overpromising, and again, they have to make serious cuts. That is the bottom line. California needs to make serious cuts to a lot of the programs that it's overpromised and take a more fiscally responsible approach to its budget. Otherwise, it's going to continue to happen year after year after year. And since California Democrats don't like the idea of cutting, it looks like it'll probably end up being some sort of new tax, whether that ends up being an SEIU sort of ballot proposition where they're going to tax billionaires, or they're going to get it another way. And remember, I've said this numerous times, when politicians fail at budgetary financing, us citizens, you are the ones who end up paying for it. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you think California needs to solve its budget deficit? Do you think that California is going to have the gall to actually start cutting a lot of these services? Or do you think they're just going to go with plan B and start taxing everybody to make up for the shortfall? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see you on the next one. Later.